Welcome back. Let's jump right into today's explainer. We're unpacking a story that masquerades as this simple tragic romance, but as you'll see, rapidly devolves into a terrifying supernatural thriller. We're going to break down the mechanics of a curse, the lore behind a restless spirit, and how an everyday ordinary object became a literal vessel for madness. So, let's get into it.
Love is an ocean in which one must drown. I mean, sounds beautiful, right? Very poetic. But what if reading those exact words completely erased who you are? What if a simple book of romantic poems was actually a literal trap? We tend to think of curses as these ancient artifacts glowing in dark, hidden caves. But the true horror of this source material is just how mundane the danger really is. It asks a pretty chilling question. How dangerous is a book of poetry? And well, the answer is absolutely deadly.
Now, every great horror story starts somewhere completely normal, right? Think of a brightly lit, everyday coffee shop. A group of friends, Abhinav, Shashank, Naveen, and Nirupama, are just hanging out. But then they notice Anamika. She sits totally alone, orders exactly one cappuccino, takes a single sip, and then spends hours silently reading a poetry book. It's honestly the perfect setup, because it's an environment you and I visit literally every day, suddenly tainted by something deeply unsettling, just sitting quietly over in the corner.
Things really take a turn when a waitress approaches the group to deliver a rather chilling warning. She actually refuses a tip and instead offers some terrifying advice. She tells them that the waiters who previously talked to Anamika simply vanished. Like poof, gone, including her own friend. Just imagine your regular barista leaning over to tell you that the quiet person in the corner is making people disappear. I mean, that is a massive red flag, but as we all know, in a story like this, red flags are basically meant to be ignored.
And ignored they are. Abhinav, full of this wildly misplaced confidence, completely brushes off the warning. He goes over, charms Anamika, and makes the absolute fatal mistake of borrowing her poetry book. She agrees, sure, but with one condition: he has to return it the very next day. So the trap is set in 3 incredibly simple steps. Step 1, ignore the blatant danger. Step 2, take the cursed object. And step 3, well, that's when the complete psychological collapse begins.
This horrific transformation takes place basically overnight. The normal, friendly guy who just loves hanging with his friends? Gone. In his place is someone instantly hostile, deeply isolated, and just terrifyingly obsessed with these verses. He completely alienates his girlfriend and his buddies. So the book isn't just, altering his mood. No, it's aggressively rewriting his entire personality from the inside out. It's a total takeover.
Now, remember that line? Pyar ek samundar hai jisme doobna padta hai. Love is an ocean in which one must drown. This verse right here is the literal infection mechanism of the curse. Once Abhinav reads these exact words, they lodge into his brain like a virus. The beautiful, romantic language completely masks a sinister reality. The poem demands that the reader drown, and actually, that is exactly what is happening to Abhinav's mind. The text is literally drowning his original identity, replacing his thoughts with these endless, repetitive, and just obsessive verses. It's like a linguistic parasite.
And of course, the madness escalates. The curse soon triggers a terrifying domestic crisis. Abhinav locks himself away in this weird trance, just muttering poetry and completely ignoring his frantic girlfriend Mala. When her friend threatens to just throw the book away, Abhinav becomes violently protective. It's wild to see, because the book is now actively defending itself against anyone who tries to threaten it.
4. That is the exact number of hours that Abhinav and his friend Shashank, who also unfortunately gets infected by the book, by the way, sit entirely motionless in that coffee shop. Once the infection really takes hold, they return to the exact place they first found Anamika. But they don't eat, they don't drink, they don't speak a normal word. For 4 straight hours, they just sit there in this eerie zombie-like trance, literally waiting for a ghost. It is such a haunting visual of complete mental subjugation.
So let's take a quick second to break down where our group actually stands. Abhinav fell first. Shashank tried to intervene and, well, he ended up possessed himself, to the point where he completely forgot his own engagement to Nirupama. Now Nirupama has to pivot into full detective mode to save her fiancé. But Naveen is completely safe, and the reason why is arguably the most brilliant twist in this entire explainer.
Seriously, why did Naveen survive when the others didn't? It all comes down to a fascinating language loophole. See, his grasp of Hindi was simply too terrible to comprehend the intricate vocabulary of the poems. Because he literally couldn't understand the words, the curse couldn't anchor itself in his mind. His incredibly poor vocabulary basically acted as an immune system against the supernatural threat. I mean, what a brilliant, almost hilarious touch of irony, right?
Okay, so with her friends completely incapacitated, the narrative focus shifts entirely to Nirupama, and she totally refuses to just be a bystander. She starts tracking the history of this mysterious girl, digging through the past to uncover the actual origin of the curse. This is a classic, highly effective trope we see all the time, the transition from victims just experiencing the horror to a protagonist actively investigating it. Nirupama realizes that to defeat the book, she really has to understand the ghost who wrote the thing.
Her digging reveals a deeply tragic timeline. Years ago, Anamika was obsessively in love with a writer named Anshuman, but he rejected her. In her intense grief, she wrote a final book of poetry dedicated to him, and then she took her own life. And now her restless, broken spirit actually haunts the very pages of the book he rejected. It's an incredibly sad backstory, but it fuels a terrifying present. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly how this curse operates. It is highly specific. First, it only targets young men. Second, it is triggered exclusively by reading the poems, which means it requires the victim's active participation. Once it's triggered, it completely rewrites the victim's personality. And the ultimate goal of all of this? It forces the victim to literally become Anshuman. The ghost of Anamika is effectively trying to forcibly reincarnate the man who rejected her, just by overwriting the minds of innocent strangers. It's a massive supernatural identity theft.
When the possessed men finally reunite with Anamika's spirit, she speaks these incredibly chilling words. I am only yours, and you are my dearest Anshuman. It really highlights the absolute delusional tragedy of her eternal, unrequited love. She doesn't see Abhinav, she doesn't see Shashank, she only sees the man she couldn't have in life. It really transforms her from just a simple monster into this figure of profound, twisted grief. Her heartbreak is so incredibly powerful that it has literally become a weapon.
And all of this leads us to the Kandar. This is an abandoned, totally ruined house that formerly belonged to the writer Anshuman. It serves as the epicenter of Anamika's heartbreak and, naturally, the inevitable battleground for our climax. The possessed men are drawn here like a magnet, bringing the whole tragic story full circle, right back to where it all started.
Here, Nirupama has to enact a desperate, ticking clock plan. She has to follow the entranced men into these ruins, confront Anamika's incredibly powerful spirit head-on, and, most importantly, burn the cursed poetry book to ashes. It's this high-stakes race where destroying a piece of art is literally the only way to save human lives. It's intense.
Which brings us to a lingering thought that I want to leave you with. You know, we walk past forgotten items every single day, right? An umbrella left on a park bench, a lonely book sitting on a cafe table. But after seeing how quickly just a few poetic words can completely rewrite a human mind, if you found a mysterious book waiting for you on the street, would you dare open it? Think about that the next time you go grab a coffee. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.